find a solution to this problem.
We keep using the same ideas, and it's not going to work for this problem.
Think harder. Lives are at stake. We need a solution.
I'm thinking as hard as I can. I can't think any harder.
Think!
You guys look like you could use some help.
Who are you? How did you even get in here?
Just know that I come from a specialized task force that deals with connecting the unconnected.
Savior of the universe. He's saving every one of us.
What in God's name are you talking about?
Connecting the unconnected is forcing your mind to make connections between two dissimilar objects. This process allows your brain to go in different directions that it hadn't gone in before, and allows you to see a bigger picture and different solutions that you might have missed in the past. A common analogy used to describe this method of thought process is a river. Thoughts, or water in this case, want to go down a similar path that it has before. Now, in order to stop this process, using connecting the unconnected, you can make a connection between two rivers. This canal forces your ideas to go through a different area, a different section of the brain that it hadn't gone through before. And that's where the ideas happen. This process allows us to think of new and creative solutions to our problems. Now, I'm going to explain to you guys a number of different ways that you can go through this process, but it's been used by some of the greatest minds of our time. Leonardo da Vinci defined in his notebook that he used this process all the time to come up with different solutions to some of the most complicated problems. One of the most common analogies that he used was seeing water ripple across a well and then hearing a bell go off at the same time. Now, those two very dissimilar objects forge a new connection for how to describe how sound travels. Waves moving across the water analogized to sound waves moving through the air. This is a breakthrough for its time, and only because Da Vinci's mind was open to forming connections between the unconnected. The first process I'm going to describe to you for connecting the unconnected is the use of random words. By use of a word bank, the one we have behind us, we can make random connections between random words. Now, I know what you're thinking. What is hotel and wheel? What are those two words going to have anything to do with my problem? I have a completely different problem. It has nothing to do with either of those words. And the answer isn't in finding characteristics about hotel or wheel that are going to be directly applicable. It's in the process of forging new paths for your ideas to go. That's where the creativity happens. So, give me an example. Give me two words off of this list.
Celery sticks and hairdryers.
Two words on this list. So celery sticks and hair dryers it is. Well, let's go through what the process breaks down. The first step in this process is list the characteristics. So on each one of your papers, list everything you can think of about celery sticks and hair dryers. I want excruciating detail. How celery sticks are green, how they grow, how their tubes transport water from the ground to the soil, how they use photosynthesis, how hair dryers use electricity, how they create heat, how the engine works, how they have to be plugged in, how they're kind of annoying to travel with. Every piece of information that you can think of. That's step one. After you finish laying out all the characteristics, the second step is to force connections. Now, what do celery sticks and hair dryers have in common? Well, your mind wants to make connections. Let's think of some connections, shall we? Found some great connections between celery sticks and hair dryers, such as celery has roots, hair has roots, heat can damage your hair's roots, just like heat can damage your celery's roots. These are just some examples in a brainstorm that we can use. So, after we've used those examples, we're going to use what is its essence. Now, what do these connections and what do these ideas have to do with our problem? By applying what we've already thought about, the connections and how they've come together, and then how does this apply to our problem, we're forging a whole different aspect. Once again, we're crossing a bridge in our minds for different ways of thinking. This gives us a different direction. We're not thinking harder, we're just thinking differently. And that's the best way to solve problems. Finally, find as many connections as you can. Continue building connections, and your mind will naturally continue to do this. Build as many connections between your ideas as you can. And don't just stop with 2 random words. Use many, 5, 6 at a time, trying to make more and more connections in your mind. By thinking this way, you're opening your mind to different solutions. And that's what random words will do for you. The next process we're going to talk about is using random objects. We're going on a thought walk. Now, the use of random objects, just like random words, is taking random objects that are around you. Anything will do. A chair, a light bulb. Take 5 or 6 of these objects in your mind and list as many characteristics of as you can. Come up with different connections that you can between the objects based off those characteristics. Play with the different ways that different things can interact with each other. And once again, roll it over your mind. Now, a great way to use random objects is to go on a thought walk. Take a break from, this boring, stuffy meeting room and go on a walk. Have each person go in a different direction. Have each person go out with the mission mindset of finding 5 objects they find that are interesting and come back with them. You don't have to physically bring them back, but come back with them in their mind with the description and the characteristics that make up them. This process, once again, allows you to make connections in your mind about different ways to stimulate this process. Very similar to random words, but can just give you that enough of a creative edge and a slightly different way to look at it that it can really lead to some great solutions. The next potential application for connecting the unconnected is the use of newspapers, magazines, and visuals. By leafing through a newspaper or magazine, pick out 3 very unique pictures or something that you find interesting and draw connections between them. By listing out all the characteristics of the picture in detail, forging connections between different aspects and how it relates to your problem, you're taking another approach to solving your problem. My favorite approach for connecting the unconnected is the dreamer, the engineer, and the realist. This 3-day approach used by Walt Disney is one of the most effective ways for thinking in directions that nobody has before. The way it's applied, on day 1, you think, what if you could have anything in the entire world, any solution to your problem, most ridiculous way, what would it be? How would you do it? It doesn't matter how absurd. The crazier, the better. Find a solution that is not even close to feasible, but would just be amazing to have, and write out that solution in excruciating detail. Find ways to describe it so that it really comes to life and what you really want in this final project. On the second day, become the engineer. No longer the dreamer. The engineer needs to sit down with the math and the application of how could we make this happen? How could we make this feasible? What could I build to make this a reality? The engineer needs to think critically about actual solutions that might need to come into play. And finally, on the 3rd day, becoming the realist. You're now the accountant. You're now the manager. You need to think, how can I actually do this? How can I feasibly finance this? How is this going to fit into the real world? By going through this 3-step approach, you take things that were once thought impossible and bring them into our world. This process opens doors that Walt Disney showed were never open before. The final tactic for using connecting the unconnected is have your 5 senses active in any place that you're doing brainstorming. The visual area should have things that inspire people, pictures, interesting colors, things that people can see and pull inspiration from. You should have great smelling food potentially in the background, or nice flowers that produce some sort of characteristic that allow people to want to smell. Having different viewpoints from how things interact visually, how they hear things, how they smell things, how they touch things, gives people another perspective. Pump in orchestra music or some sort of background music so that people can draw inspiration from these things. And of course, have a clean environment that people can feel free to touch things and move with their other senses. As you guys can see, by using connecting the unconnected as part of your thought process, you can solve problems better and more creatively than you have ever been able to before. This process has been used by some of the greatest minds, not only our generation, but in the history of humanity. By using your mind, your whole mind, connecting different pathways that have never been used before, you will find solutions to your problems that have just been out of your grasp.
By thinking about the connections between ramen noodles and mustard gas could have led us to this solution. Excellent.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. Where will you go next?
There are other problems that need solving, and other connections that need to be forged. I'm off. Good luck.
Just imagine.